Today is Chaf Gimel Elul, Hafshin Samech Tes. We're learning Samech Tes from the Rebbe Rashab with Rabbi Yaakov. On page Nun.
So we saw that the chayes of the nefesh, which is b'schabrus b'klei haguf, and we discussed b'arichas how the nefesh is b'schabrus with the guf, until the fact that there's a very close interaction between the guf and the nefesh. We saw that the biur b'zeh is that that's only a ha'ora. Die ha'ora me'anefesh bilvad. But the etzem nefesh is completely withdrawn from any islabshus in the guf, which would lead to chaim, leads eventually to chaim gashmiyim, and it's not b'klal shayat to be mispoil, as we saw in the nefesh that is mislabish in the guf. It's mispoil from the occurrences of the guf, but that's not shaykh in the etzem anefesh yatzmusa. And there we saw that the hainu racha or isayah, right at the end of page, well, not right at the end, but near the bottom of page Nun Aleph, that the harisayah is pashtusa hechtzeni ma'id shenikor rak gilui ha'ora di ha'ora. But that is what is mislavish or mischaber mit the guf. But the etzem anefesh remains withdrawn from these chavers with the guf. So we see then that we have the etzem the nefesh, and then we have a ha'ora, a luminescence, and what do you call a reflection bilvad of the ruchnius of the etzem hanefesh, which is mislavish in the guf and interacts with the inner guf, as we saw before. And then we brought a dogma that we saw that, for example, the Eivere Haguf, they have in themselves what we call the inyan of the Eivere Haguf, have what they call in the koyach hatanua, the ability to move and to cause movement, and that's called in Lashon Chassidus koyach hatanua, the capacity to move around. And the koyach hatanua, but usually enters the field of gashmias mamish, as it is causing the body to move around, and even a pool of gashmias can include doing something outside the own personality of the Adam, and actually busying himself with the Inyanim outside himself and changing them and affecting them. But that's the inyan of movement. In other words, you can cause other things to move, like throwing or all those types of movements. Even writing is moving, causing another object to move. So the koyach hatanua, which is involved in a pool of gashmias, what's your problem? The koyach hapula, which is involved in a pool of gashmias, ein ze me'etzem achayes shebiyad, me'achas shebo b'derech b'dvar nivdal memeno. Hari ze rak ha'ora nivdelas min ha'etzem. So we saw that the koyach hatanua, albeit has its own madrigas of etzem and its pashtas v'chulu. Of the very fact that the definition, the concept of a koyach hatanua is that its Indian is to be involved in Pu'ula Gashmi, to move the limbs and to make them affect the Olam HaGashmi. And therefore, compared to the Etzem Chayes Shabiyad, then it's only an Indian for Dova HaNivdal, and therefore since it's busy it's over the Dova HaNivdal, it's called a Ha'ora Nivdelis Min HaEtzem. In other words, since it moves into movements which lead into the Gashmistic world outside, as it were, the Etzem Guf and the Etzem Eivra Guf. Therefore, compared to the Etzem Chayes, the Etzem power of life, which there is from the Nefesh in the Eivra Haguf, then the Koyach HaTanua is beklal like a Ha'ora Miyad Bilvad from the Etzem. So finish it off. Is there something going on over there? So the Koyach HaTanua is beklal adova ha'ora nivdelis min ha'etzem. Even though the truth of the matter is that even in Koyach HaTanua there are various madregas of etzem and ha'ora v'chulu. But maybe the kavanah is to say that since it's all in it, Pu'ula Gashmi is, therefore it's beklal ha'ora nivdelis from the chayes that there is in the Etzem Chayes HaNefesh in the Yad. Or maybe the kavanah is to say that in the Atzmius of the Koyach HaTanua, it's on ha'orev nideres. Maybe that's the kavanah, because he doesn't say it's only a ha'orev nideres mi'a etzem mi'a Koyach HaTanua ha'atzmius, but he says it's a pura gashmius ain't them etzem ha'chayes. And then he says at the end of the sentence that it's only ha'orev nideres min ha'etzem. Well, that would tend to indicate that he's not talking so much about madregas in the Koyach HaTanua, but beklal the Koyach HaTanua compared to other inyonim of the Etzem Chayes on a higher level, how it is in the klolas of the Eivodim, how they're makabel from the nefesh. Okay, that's what we see in davening. How do we say al kol shevach ma'aseh yodecha? That in davening, in Birchas Krishma, we praise the Eibishter for the whole praise called Shevach, the laudation or the praise of Maaseh Yodecha. As Kaviyocho, we praise Inim, which we call it Maaseh Yodecha. I mean, the Eibishter doesn't have any hands and he doesn't have any Koyach HaMaisa. We mean as a low level, a inyan of ha'ora, which similar to the Maaseh Yodecha, that's a Koyach HaTanua bilvat. In the hands, compared to the etzem of the highest in the hands, that's only a ha'ora in the Deres. Similarly, the whole inyan with the Eibishter Kaviyocho makes the Shamayim V'or, it's Beyodo. We find many mentions in the Pesukim and in the Tfilas to the inyan of Maaseh Yodayim of the Eibishter, then that's the way of saying that it's only a ha'ora nivdelis mina etzem, that from Kaviyocho, the Eibishter, how he is be'etzem, to the making of the Elamis, then that's like a ha'ora chitonius nivdelis, it's killed, being separated off from the main, what you might call isachtas. The main bittul of is kasha sin elakus, even though cholila nothing is really separate from the Eibishter. Or the gabiat atzmus elakus. L'mayla meo elamis, then we can consider it a ha'ora niv delet. And therefore we say that's the hint that we say of kol shevat maaseh yodecha, that we call it kaviyocho, the act of his hands, the tanua chitonius compared to the etzem. Like written in another place.
So, since Briosai was the work of Hashem's hands, and it says also by Yitzit Tzrayim, I took you out b'yad chazaka, does that mean it was the same?
Yeah, so it's also got to do with over there, since it's yad chazaka, we don't just say ma'aseh yodecha. We say yad chazaka, When a mensch describes it doing something biyad chazaka, then he puts all the pnimis of his chayes into it. So then we would say that there's a hamshach adi etzem into the chitzonius. You understand? That was the union of Nisim and Dvarim sheyetzim min hateva that were in Mitzrayim, and they were not only yetzim min hateva, but they were in a form of the Gilead, the Eibishter's running the whole world, how everything in the world is bottled to him. And therefore he was able to punish the evildoers and bring out the Yidden, Mitzrayim, through Inyonim, which showed his complete ruling over the Teva HaOlam. And those are the Pshat Chazokah, Yad Chazokah. It's like the Alter brings in Tanya Perek Beis, but he says over there that when a person blows, man denofach mitoichei upnimiusei nofach. If you blow, if you blow heavily out of your mouth, then you draw from the pnimis hachayas, even though it's basically the same chayas that goes out in the mouth, which would come out in dibur. What's the difference is that dibur is how it comes out in an ordered and mitzumtzum way, limited way. Nafik is when you draw on the pimius and atzmius outside to the etzimor. Therefore, you know, when a mensch blows hard, he can get faint or he can become dizzy from doing so, because that draws on the etzim mishkashas of the nevish v'deguf, the etzim achayas. Therefore, he says, "Kol shevach ma'asi yodecha k'mishkas v'mokim acher v'lochein atzilus peklal." Therefore, the olam atzilus is Nikro Odom Dasiya. It's called Odom Dasiya. Ukamishkosa b'mokimacha b'drush Rashima Chakicha Chatziva Asiya. Now that needs a little bit of an explanation. What does he mean with that? After all, Atzilus is Elikus. Atzilus is the Elam which is still here v'chayev, still b'tachlas ha'ichud with the Eibishter. Why do we say that it's called Klal Asiyah? So the union is that we have three Olamas Protim, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. After Malchus Atzilus, we have three Olamas, what they call the Olamas Protim. Olam Bria is the beginning of the Yesh, and Yetzirah is more development in the Yesh. Asiyah, Yesh more, and Olam Agashmi Tachtain is Mamish Yesh. So, in a more general way, klal. These are what's called oilamas deklolos. They're called oilamas deklolos in the Kisvei Arizal, or sometimes just in a general way, they're called oilamas klolium. How do we say? If we take the whole way that David revealed himself from before the Tzimtzum down to Atzilus, then we can find four madregas: Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah Kaviyachol, even before you get to Olam HaBriya HaProti. And that is that we say that the Ursh of Nea Tzimtzum Mamish, well, that's called Atzilus Diklol, or Diklolus. Generally speaking, compared to the Eibishter, that's called Olam Atzilus Diklol, general. And then Ak, Olam Kadmei, that is called Odom de Bria Diklolus. Because the union from Odom, or the union of Kalim and Oiri, so they occur in Ach, albeit in a very high and elevated and abstract madriga, but there already begins there the union of Oiris with Kalim. But that's the union of that which called Odom, the Brio, but in a closed way. Yeah, because compared to Olam HaBriya Amiti, then Ach is Mamish Kil Elakus. And then we say that Olam Ha-Akudim and Olam Ha-Atuyu, the two of them together, they're called Odom, the Yetzirah Deklolos. They're called Yetzirah. Because there in Akudim you already got the Kalim B'Golui, even though only in a general way, Bentayim. And then in Toihu, in Olam Ha-Nikudim, you have already Oiris Kalim. Emes, they didn't hold. The Oiris Kalim were, how they called, Neufer, or they were Misnagish. They had a yin from Shvira, it was a Gila of Elam Be'eres Be'kerim, that's called Olam HaYetzirah, a Kloli or Diklolus. And then we say that Olam HaTzilus is called Asiya de Klolis, because it's already Eretz B'Kelim Mamish, and the Kelim are already Magdul the Eretz, and the Eretz is ready to be Meir into Olamus Yitzir V'Asiya Haproti. So therefore, at Legabi Klolis Olamus and Klolis Kol HaGiluyim, from before the Tzimtzum down to Atzilus, then Atzilus is called Adam Datzilus, Adam Datzio. It's called Olam HaAsiyah. Ve'ilu Ak is called Adam Dabriya.
Is this what you just described? Is that what we otherwise we call the seven heavens on the earth?
Huh?
Is that what we otherwise
Yes.
call the seven heavens on the earth?
Seven happenings?
Heavens.
No. The seven heavens are already in Olam HaYetzirah or Olam HaBriya. They're already long after the Olamas have been created. They have nothing to do with the event. There's Shiva Rakim. Lafis there, it follows that even though Atzilus is Mamish Elakus, both the Eretz and the Kelim, and Atzilus are Elakus Mamish, nonetheless we call Atzilus in a much more general way, clapping the whole Gil Elakus, from the Evisha, right from the very beginning of these scholars, we call that Asiya. The Rebbe said, Yesh b'zeh two inyanim. That since of Kosov, the whole inyan of Atzilus is to make it possible for the Oyer to be Meir into Briya Yitzir of Asiya HaProti. Well, that's the whole idea. In other words, why do we want Oyers for Kelim? Why do we want the Oyer should be Meir, Davke Alidei Kli? And that is Meir in Malchus, and eventually Malchus. It causes the whole inyan of Briya Yesh Miyayin into Olam HaBriya, or that is all through what we call the Mamutza of Atzilus. Mamutza becomes, Atzilus becomes a Mamutza between the Olamas Shalamayla and the Olamas Hanivroim, Briya Yitzir V'Asiya HaProtiyim. And that Mamutza, albeit makes it higher, since it's a middle point, not a middle go-between, between Etzem Elakus and Olamas Hanivroim, it's Lamayla Olamas Hanivroim, but it's already sharp to them. Because through that whole, what you might call go-between level, which is called Atzilus, we reach such a combination that the Eretz V'Kelim can be Meir and bring about Yesh Miyayin into Olamas Briya Yitzir V'Asiya HaProti. And therefore, Atzilus is also called Adam Da'asiya. In other words, that even though Atzilus has got nothing to do with Asiya, of a closed way, it's called Asiya, because it's the Mamutza through which we eventually reach the inyan of Asiya B'Poyo. And that becomes Olam HaAsiyah HaTachte. And that was the Rebbe, the fact that Olam HaAsiyah has some connection with the whole concept of being a middle point to bring about A'inim, which is ultimately Asiyah, and therefore it's also called Asiyah even clearly Legabi Al-Kushel Amaylahi Meno, even though B'Emes it's Kemuvan Rochek Ma'asiyah B'Tachas Arichut. And therefore said the Rebbe, that's the whole Inyan, that where we have a Bechina, which already becomes a Ha'ora Bilvat, and a Ha'ora Di Ha'ora, it's only a Oya which is Meir into the Kelim in Atzilus, even though Atzilus is still B'Tachas Hayichud with Elakus, Elakus Bi'atzmei, but it's already the beginning. It's like the Koyach HaTanua, which is beginning to be a Ainin which moves into Pura Michutz La'etzem, or as we call it down here, Pura Gashmiyas. And therefore Atzilus is called Asiyah, even though it's not actually Mamish the Asiyah, but it's the Klal of Koyach which leads to the Asiyah. Pink the Zivi, that Koyach HaTanua is not actually the Asiyah, but it's already a Koyach which is coming separate from the Etzem Achayas in the Yad, preparing itself to make a Proteus Dika, I had to call a specific activity at any point in the Olam HaGashmi. Akameshkasu b'makimache b'drush rishima chakika chativa ashiya. And like it's brought down, there was apparently a famous mimer which was called the mimer or the drush of Rishima Chakika Chatziva Asiyah. Now that's 4 madrigas which are brought down in Siddur Beneget to the Oisias. That's got to do with Inyan HaKelim, Oisias and Kelim, a similar concept. Oisias are lower level, and Kelim are the, as you might call it, madriga Pneumias of Oisias. So in Oisias we have what's called the Oasis of the Rishimon. Now you may have heard, I don't want to go too much because it's not really shy to the Indian of the Maimah. I'll just mention very briefly that you've heard of the Rishimon, but that was what was left over in the Cholol after the Tzimtzum Harishain. Well, BM that was there before the Tzimtzum, but it was Behelem and Balua, Lagamre Betoich, Ha'oyer Ein Tzev, and it's Oisias. But the emes is that it's the Indian of Oisias, the Koyach, Hagvusha Ein Tzev, of its Indian of Oisias. But however, the way the Oisias are in Rishimo, they're Betachlis Hadakus, and they're Bluim Lagamri and the infant in Eitzai. And then after the Tzimtzum, they become also infant Oisias, which are Nikorim, which are recognizable, but they're called Oisias Achakika. In other words, that the Oisias are still so butter, like we talk here about the way the Oisias are in the Koiches HaNefesh, for example. The Oisias in Keser, for example, or in the Madrigas getting close to Atzilus, but they're not yet Mamish, the Indian of Oilemes, or even Atzilus, or they're called Chakika, because they're like cut into the, just like the Oisias Chakika, cut into the Evan. They have no, as it were, Matthias apart from the Evan. So the Indian of in that Kufa, there are 2 levels. There's Oisias which are cut through the Evan completely, but that was in the Oisias of the Luchas Harishoines. Yeah, you heard about that. The Luchas Harishoines, that the Oisias went all the way through. The Luchas Harishoines, and therefore the Samachs and the Mems, says the Gemara, well, Benesh, how you aimed him. They were standing miraculously, Kamuvan Lama. It's the miracle was also that they read from both sides the same way. That's what's written in Yecheskel, that it was like a Megillah Haksu upon him, that read behind exactly the same as it did in the front. Upon it, that's Oisias Hakiko in the highest level. So therefore, some people want to say that Oisias are Rishimu. They're like the Oisias Hakika, Hamitim, the mamish from both sides of the word. Kaviochel there in the Etzim Indian of Elikus, how it is. How they are not even Betelim like Amrei to Elikus. And then we say that the Oisias which are a bit lower, in Kesa, for example, or they're Oisias Hakika. In other words, they're cut into the heaven, but they got a certain cheers inside the heaven. They don't go all the way through. And there's Oisias which are called Chatziva. What Chatziva means to, how do you call it, quarry something. It's like a machatzov, it's called a quarry. In other words, where you cut the rocks off from a source, well, that's called Chatziva, Lachtzov. Is how do you call it, Lachtzov Avanim, but that's called a quarry. So that means you cut off. So, and stones are indicative in for the Oisias, as is well known. Therefore, Chatziva means that the Oisias have already become Mamish Oisias, but it's still clear that they come from their Shoyeret. They're not Mamish Amachias yet in the simple sense. They're not Mamish, for example, like Oisias of Machshova, for example. But Oisias in the Machshova are very recognizable to the person, but they're very Ruchnias, and they're still somewhat, like Kolol inside his Machshova. And then he can't say out into Dibur what he's got in Machshova, even though it's all Oisias. And then there's the Inyan and Oisias Atibur. Well, they come out Mamish and a Gilu and a Pirud, or they're called the Inyan from Atzio. In other words, that the Oisias have already come out in a separation, or for example, Oisias Aksiva. Like you write on a page, the Oisias have come out and they become a separate entity in the Geo, in the Inca, ala Klafukuk, Aitabete. Among other, that's 4 different levels in the Madrigas of the Gila Ha'oisiat. So in that Drush, which deals with that particular Inyan, over there, it's written that the Inyan of Olam HaTzilas is called Odom Da Sia. Why it's called Adam? Because it's Isis for Kalim, like we saw earlier. But it's called Adam da Asiya, even though it's nothing to do with Asiya yet, but it's a mamutza and a medium through which the Oisias are going to go out and they're going to become Oisias eventually in Olam Asiya Hagashmiyas, and therefore it's also called Gabi higher in Etzem Elikus, it's called Asiya. Like we saw in the earlier in the previous mind we saw in the Har Azaitim, there was a koyach hatzamech harukni shematzmiach eis of gashmi shebavadai einzer rak b'chinas ha'ora de ha'ora nivdeles me'etzem harukni is the koyach hatzamech, and commission is blurly. You had that in the previous mimer, and we also had it in several other passages in the previous Maimorim, that the Indian the koyach hatzamech is a koyach eloki atzmi, which is found in the earth, but there's different ha'oras of the koyach hatzamech, and that which actually causes the particular ace of gashmi to actually grow out of the ground, well, that's called the koyach hatzamech ha'ora bilvad. Ha'ora da'ora nivdelas also from the koyach hatzamech. V'hainu b'chinas gashmi sheba ruchni. So that's the level that we called and we saw was the in of gashmi sheba ruchni. Like we saw in the Maimah of Anoichi, we saw over there the Rebbe mentioned that in order for the how do you call it, the koyach, the koyach hatzameh, even the ha'ora nevdelas, which after the Indian ruchni. How is that able to cause a dova gashmi? A dova gashmi is a dova hopeful, a dova ruchni. How is it able to cause it to grow? And how do they have a hashpah one onto the idea? And similarly, he brought other mishalim from how do things like the nefesh ultimately get into the inyan aguf, and how is it able to be mekabel from the guf, like we just saw here. And then he says that you have in every linkage of two opposites like that, you have the gashmi shebaruchnias, the hainu, the lower level, the bechina haki tachtoina, as you might say, in the ruchnistic level, the hainu bechina yesha tachtoina shebaruchni, we call that gashmi shebaruchnias, shemislavish or mischaber bechinas haruchni sheba gashmias, and the gashmias also produces a very high part of itself, which we call the inyan of ruchni sheba gashmiyat, and then the two are able to unite and form, because of that, a joining together and each chabris of the two madregas. Like he brought them dugma over there from the inyan nefesh, the ha'ora chitainis of the nefesh, which is mislavish in the guf. We saw there's the inyan from gashmiyas. Shebaruchnias, well, that's the bechina taktoina. Mamish in a nefesh, in van ha'ora nivdelas was mislabish, as it were, in the dam. But we saw that there was a inyan in the dam where the aid haruchni, in the dam there's like a very delicate vapor, very warm and sort of how do you call it, delicate vapor in the blood, and that's called ruchni sheba gashmi. So that aid, or aidim, Rosh Rabbim, they get together with the Gashmi Shabaruchnis, with the lowest level, the Inyan Nefesh, and they're able to somehow or another form a Yichud, and through that we have the Inyan of the Yichud of the Nefesh with the Guf. But even that, we're going to see in a minute, needs the Koyach HaMafli Lase. So the Rebishter, Kosof, that's only in order to, that you might call, be Mishaber Esa Huizen, to make it easier for us to understand. Of Sokosof, it's Ruchnias, and Sokosof does is a form of Gashmi. So how do they ultimately get together? However, we see that there is this inyan, the Arida Mitzada Tachtena, and the Aliyah, as it were, the highest aspect in the Arida Mitzada Elyon, and the Aliyah, the highest aspect in the Tachtein. Ulamaila Yesh Loima, so the Rebbe, the Pchinas Gashmi Shabaruchnias, or the Indian of hell, for example, how do the Indian of the Spheres Alienis, are they mashpia lamata into Elam as Biyah, for example, or how are they even mashpia into Malchus, or for that matter, how do the Oiras actually join up with the Kelim? However, he said that we could say that Lamaila in the Sfiras or Elyonis, Gashmi Shebaruchnias Hainu Pchinas Oisioish Sheba Elyoy. We could say that that's the union of the Oisias how they are in the Elyoy. Now, what is the union of an Oisias? It's well known that Oisias are like Doimem. Oisias themselves don't really have any message to give over. The Oisias are just a medium through which a spiritual or other message enters the Oisias, and they pass that over to you. In other words, you form a word or a sentence alidei Oisias, or just the Oisias themselves, without the special joining together. Each os itself doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you that it's an aleph or a base. Only when they're joined together, and the what you might call the koyach miyuchad, which joins them together and brings over their pirush, or it carries a ruchnias dika inim with it. That afar it follows lefiseh. The tzokos of the Oisias are like the doimim sheba ruchnias. They're like the final level in the inim from ruchnias, but they are nonetheless ruchnias because they have the ability to bring over, and therefore the word os, as is well known, is from the word oso in Aramic, which means to go or to come. We say in the Gemara, osa ploni osa. That means he came. Therefore, the word ois is from that same basic Aramic root word, which means to come or to bring. Isi. In the Gemara, with two yuds, isi means to bring. Not just to come, but to bring along. Therefore, we see from that then that the word ois is connected with the idea of bringing and transferring something from one level to a lower level. That means that the os, on the one hand, is a medium to be found in the tachtoin, but he also forms a message for the kesher, which is made with the in the Elyon. He's like a lower madrega in the Elyon, and he makes a message which eventually is able to somehow or another be mishkabel in the tachta. So we see then that these Oisias are a ruchniastic form of an asiya in the ruchnias of the madrega ha'elyon, and that's a cloud. The Umatum we say that even though Oisias are a ruchniastic thing, they're not Kashmir. It's just that when we talk out dibur, it becomes like an Indian Kashmir. Although ultimately the Oisias are not mamish Kashmirs, they just have the ability to go out into Elam or Kashmir. The Oisias are ruchnias, depending on which level they are. They're more ruchnias, and therefore in such madregas l'mayla the Oisias are mamish ruchnias, but they're also an Asi. They've got this ability to come and to bring and transport the message or the ruchnis which is there in the Elin and bring it over to the tachtain. And therefore they're like the bechina of Gashmi Sheba ruchnis. How does l'mayla in the Esesfira? So there is a k'moy bechina Oisias Sheba Malchus. If we take the inif and Oisias how they are in Malchus Datzilas, Nasa bechinas moichin Chabad the Brio. He said those Oisias that they are in Malchus, but they're Oisias of Atzilas. They're the Oisias of Dibur of Atzilas. In other words, they are the Bechina Tachtoin Sheba Elyon, but they're Dibur of Atzilas. What happens to them? Well, they become the Oisias of Machshova of Elama, or Oisias to Chabad. Yeah, Chochma Bina V'Daz, even higher than Machshova in a way. Yeah, they become, because Elama Bris, B'Chlal Elam Machshova, they become already the Inyan of Chochma Bina V'Daz. That is in Bria, Akamesh Kosa, B'Rekutek Torah, Dibu Amashchil V'Ato Yigdal. Yeah, well, that's in Pasha Shlach L'chor. Where Moshe Rabbeinu prayed for the Eibush Ato Yigdal Koyach Adishem Leima, you should Erech Hapayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emes, you should forgive the sin Meraglim. And so the Alter Rebbe writes over there Be'inyan kasher dibarta leimoya, as you have spoken in order to say. In other words, that you've spoken in order to say. So the question over there, Namaim is L'mayla by the Eibusha. What does it mean you've said in order to say? Like it's two inyonim. And therefore the inyan from dibarta, the inyan from oisis, arayah by the Eibusha, they become a much higher level from leimoya, even amiras, a much more delicate form of saying, in the makabel, in the madrega that the divine dibur is going over to. Shemiyah dibur nasema shova. From the dibur in Olam HaAtzilas there becomes machshova in Olam HaBriya. In other words, that those issues that they are in Atzilas, or they become oisius of machshova in how do you call Briya. In other words, that from a very high level, they go over and become, as it were, a high level in the Tachtoin. In other words, what was Gashmi Sheba Elim becomes Rufnius Sheba Tachtoin. And Mamere, the Alter Rebbe is Mavai that over there were a few other Dugmois. Mavua B'Mochimacher. For example, the Keshem Shesiklim, I'm sorry, the Keshem Shekelim Ta'atzilas, Nasim Naran L'Biyah, K'moi Kein Yesh Shoima, the oiras ta'atzilas hein mepinus hakinim shelamayla me'atzilas. In other words, it's a cloud we've had it on different occasions in these Maimorim, that kelim of atzilas, by going through malchus ta'atzilas, and then they split through malchus ta'atzilas and they become what's called naran de biyah, they become nefesh ruach nishoma in biyah, or they become the oiros of the Esesphiras, the oiros of the Kelim in Biyah. In other words, we see it's like a choisa mamisapei, like a stamper. When you stamp it into the shape, it does the opposite. It shows the opposite to what it was originally. In other words, that those Kelim of Atzilas, they become the oiros in Biyah. So we just pointed out the Kelim is Shaitoisias. So Kelim are the low level in Atzilas. Or they become a higher level in the Ruchnis of the Olam Sheh Mitach. They become the Oiris, how they are in Olam HaBriya, HaNivroi, in Olam HaBriya, the Nivroi. So therefore we see that the lowest level in the Taktim becomes a high level in the Elyon, and that causes the yichud of the two. And that's a cloud godel, that those things which are only, as it were, already becoming oisias, and they're the koyach hayurida mamish in Atzilas, because oisias and kelim are always in of an yurida v'amshoka and matter, or they become the koyach of, as it were, aliyah lamayla in Olam HaBriya. And he says similarly, are those kelim how they are, those oiroids, how they are in Atzilas, or they come about from the kelim shelamayla me'atzilas. In other words, that those madregas, which are the madregas tatoinui in the oira shelamayla me'atzilas, or they become the oiroids in the oila me'atzilas. What sort of kelim shelamayla me'atzilas? So we could suggest that means Beklau, the union of the kelim of akudim, or even the kelim of nikudim, because occurred over there. That's where the Shviras HaKelim occurred. But the whole of Olam HaAtzilas is made from the very lowest level in the Nafila of the Shviras HaKelim. In other words, in the highest level in the Shviras HaKelim. To tell you, from that, as it were, we make the whole of Olam HaAtzilas. So we could say that, albeit it's from the Shivrei Kelim, about from those madregas are the kelim of Tuyu, which are able to be niklal. They have enough kedusha in them that they can be niklal in Atzilas, or they become the oiras of Atzilas. And that's maybe the reason why I puts in Yesh Loima. That's an interesting concept. It's a little bit, but one has to say kacha, because what sort of kelim are the lamayla me'atzilas which become the oiras of Atzilas? Unless we say the kelim how they are in Ak or in Akudim. Now that could be. I'm not legamri how they call it, moichi that may have shoddy years. Because it's much been some of above in a place that ain't nachanami, the kelim how they are in Ak, or they become the mocker of the spheres how they are in Atzilas. And what sort of mocker is that? They become the mocker, the oiros in Atzilas. So it could be that that's what he's referring to, the Rebbe. But if he's referring to the union of Toihu, then B'tirach Doichach we can maybe say, by way of a push, that since the highest level in the Shvira gets Niklal into Atzilas, then maybe we could say that the Kelim, how they are in Lamaila Me'atzilas, become the Oirois of Atzilas.
So Rabbi, if we have something in this world that is an Or, and then in Atzilut, it would be a Kli, what would it become above Atzilut?
What would it become above Atzilut?
Yeah, because if it's a Kli in Atzilut, it's an Or above. So I mean,
I don't know what your problem. We say that the Kelim of Atzilut become the Oiros in Biyah. So all we're saying is that Lamaila Me'atzilas is also true. That the Kelim how they are Lamaila Me'atzilas, they become the Oiros in Atzilas. They become the Oiros in Atzilas.
Right, but I mean, something that is already considered a Or in Atzilut, what would it be above?
What is it about?
Yeah.
Well, it's about the whole Indian of Hashpoah in the Olam Biyah. The whole Hashpoah in the Olam Biyah is only the Bechina Tachta in Shebeli. Gashmis Shebeli. That's what we're saying. But the whole Hashpoah and the whole, even the Oyer, how it is in Olam HaBriya, Anivro, is only from the Kelim of Atzilas, not from the Oyer. The Oyer remain Mudal, from the actually Sabbaths of the spirits in Atzilas. In Bria, I'm sorry. Yeah, what is your problem? I don't quite understand. The oiros remain muvdolim. You follow? And the oiros are there from the kelim shelamayla me'atzilas. So the whole point I was trying to make is, what do we mean? Which kelim shelamayla me'atzilas? You follow? If we're talking about the kelim shenishbru, but to you, then it's a little bit of a chiddush. But kein yesh loima. Just that in some of in certain places, the bigger riches, that the kelim how they are in Ak are the emes mokeh b'derech hamshoche without richuk kolkach, they become the kelim how they are in Olam HaAtzilas. So if he said it's toik tzad therefore it could be that he means that the oiros somehow not become the kelim, and until he means the kelim of Toyo.
The Kelim of Torah is called Yitzir. You mentioned in the beginning of the class that Torah is the Yitzir.
Yeah, that's another one. That's what we're talking the Elam Saklolim. The Elam Saklolim, that's only called Yitzir, Gabi Etzema Insol. That doesn't affect the fact that the oiros can become Kelim. That doesn't have any shaykhs to them. Alright. And it's yeah, I mean, it's well known that the kelim of Atzilas, they become the oiros in Bria. Well, that's why the Rebbe writes Yesh Loim or Ulai. I'm always suggesting, okay, that's a little bit of a dova hadoirish biur to say that the kelim of Maila become the oiros of Atzilas. You follow? Because what I brought from some above was a bit under that the kelim how they are in Ak, they become the kelim of Atzilas. This is the kelim become the oiros. This is a bisschen an andere. Therefore, we have to say that that's got maybe a shaykhs to Toyo. However, says the Rebbe, v'ayim mashkosu v'yim higher-ness, v'ayim mashkosu b'abir d'shchoira ani b'inyan, b'chinas ha'yoysa achreina she'bo'erein. Say, whatever, that's a famous Maimon Shir Hashirim in Likutei Torah, Shchoira Ani, and there's two biurim over there. What's one on the biurim in Likutei Torah, very complex. So there's one biur, and then there's a biur, the Tosefes biur. So over there in the Tosefes biur, the Alter Rebbe deals a lot with the whole meaning of the Atmas, and then the Yosha Kolu Atmas, and then the Tzimtzum Arisha, and it's a very big, famous Arichas Abir in those in Yonim. And over there, the Alter Rebbe says that the Uyer, how it was, according to the Rizal Mamaras Kol Acholo, prior to the Tzimtzum, in that Gufa, the different madrigas of what you might call is Pashtus Oyer, and then there's Etzem Oyer. And he says the Etzem Oyer is Kol Mamish in Atzmusik Barach. But it's called Kaviyocho, the Bechina Hayesa Acharena Sheba Atzmusik, or Ba'oyer Ein Teif, which this Ein Teif means in the Etzem Oyer Sheba Etzem Oyer. And that is a Bechina Hayesa Acharena Kaviyocho in the Inifan. So we see that on every level there's Inin Kamoisha Hu, and there's Kilo Kolol in that, a Madrega which is going to make it possible to be Nimshach to another Madrega, and there it's still going to be, as it were, Sapech. It's going to become like a Kesher with the opposite idea, with the, what you might call the Ruchni Shebagashim, with the Elin Shebetachter. So we see that on everyone, and the reason he wrote that in, because he shows that it's even in the very Mokkeh Harishan, Mamish in Atzmus Kaviyocho, the Kavi, the first Madrega of the Uyer, it's also like that which was Mamish Korul in the Atzmus, becomes a Uyer, which is later Shaychach upon it to the Tzimtzum. From the Tzimtzum we eventually go down. However, what we eventually get, Lamata, is we get the Iniv and Ruchnius, Gashmi Sheba Ruchnius unites with the Ruchnius Sheba Gashmiyas. However, the Rebbe puts in, now this bracket belongs to what we began talking about. This bracket was like in the middle when we're talking about the Gashmi Sheba Ruchnius. So now the Rebbe said, Gam zeh hu b'emes b'koach hamachli la'aseish shemakashi Ruchnius be Gashmiyas. In other words, even though we said the word koach ha'tzomeach, but that's a ha'orah from the Koach. There's a Gashmi Sheba Ruchnius, and then there's a Ruchnius Sheba Gashmis, and they join up. He said, even there, he said, they don't really join up. You can't really say Aina, which is Sokotzov, even though it's Gashmi Sheba Ruchnius, but Sokotzov it's still a Aina Ruchni, and the same with the Aina from Gashmi. Even the Ruchnius of the Gashmi is the Sokotzov. Gashmi, like we pointed out, that aid in the Dam. Well, that aid Cham in the Dam is still Ein in Gashmi. Even if they join up, it's very hard to imagine how can they really become one entity together. And therefore he says, ultimately you have to say that that's like we began the whole period that is in the Koyach HaMachli La says that the Etzem Koyach HaKol Yocher of the Eibishter, he's able to join Gashmi's Ruchnius together. And if all the beauty that we gave are only like we said, L'shaber, so easy to make it easier. And since the Abish says we have a club and all in Yonim of Seidish Tosel does it in a way that will be at least miskabel somewhat bedas or odom, therefore there's this attempt, as it were, kaviyoho on the part of the boyrei to be mishalev the Yonim, that they are closer. But he said the ultimate union between them, that one becomes mashpir and mislavish in the other, well, that's Tafka Adidei, the union of Machli La'ah. So he took you to the Koach HaMachli La'ah. But Kamei Kain says, the Rebbe, now we go back to where we were. Hu benefesh, shebechinas Gashmi, sheberuchnis hanefesh, dahainu bechinas oira hachitoini levad. What do we mean by Gashmi, sheberuchnis? Like we pointed out, we don't really have any Gashmi, sheberuchnis. No, we mean the chitoinius, the most possible chitzenius to imagine in the oil of the nefesh, who shemislavish between the ruchnis shebedam nefesh. In other words, that in the dam, you have this Indian, and we call it dam ha-nefesh, that there's a certain nefesh which is mislavish in the dam. However, even that is only able to be mislavish only through the fact that there's a certain, as it were, ruchnias in the dam itself, and that's like we pointed out, the edim and the dakim, edim dakim shebetoch adam, but also b'frinus chayim b'sodiyim, and then those chayas ruchnias of the nefesh becomes fleshly chayas. It becomes chayas which is tied to the actual body, even though b'etem still not, and that's why we still need the Koach HaMachli La'aseis, even though we bring them as possibly close one to the other, and therefore he calls the Indian of the Dam nefesh, even though the nefesh is mudo me adam, but we call it the inyan of, till the pasuk also says in the Torah, ki adam hu nefesh. In other words, it's so great as the yichud of the nefesh with the dam that we call the dam hu nefesh. And sometimes it's mashmeh, and maybe we could suggest that that's possibly the pshat here of a lo nirali kokach, and that is that sometimes we say that the actual how do you call it, nefesh, but the pasuk says ki adam hu nefesh. It means those eidim ruchnim in the dam. That sort of ruchnis that there is in the dam, which is able to be miskasher with it. In simple terms, it means that if you spill the blood of any given creature, then the chayes of the nefesh is in that blood. Al kaponi the nefesh achiyuni. V'hine ike ishlapshus chayes hanefesh hu b'moyach shebareish. So that's even clearly that the ruchnias of the nefesh is able through this whole yichud to form a kesher with the inyan at the Evrei Haguf. But he says the Ika Islavshus of the Chayas HaNefesh begins in the Moyach. Yeah, Kamashikosa Sefer Shalbeinanim, Perek Nun Aleph. That's the famous Perek in Tanya where the Alter Rebbe reckons out the whole Yichud of the Chayas HaNefesh. Yeah, within in Moyach. And he points out that from the Moyach it spreads out into the other Eivarim. So in other words, you've got two stages in this Islavshus. You got one stage in the Islavshus, the Hainu, the Etzem Islavshus, or the higher levels of the Nefesh in the Moyach, and then through that Islavshus, then there's the Moyach becomes like a midpoint, and he conducts further, that ties into the lave, and then from the lave it gets pumped around in the blood, to all the other Evrei Haguf, until there's ultimately ashpoya from the nefesh b'kol Evrei Haguf. So we see that it goes through the three main stages, as they call in the Zohar, moiche kavta, through the brain, the heart, and the koved. How do you call it? The liver. They are melech. How do you call it? Moich leiv koved. They are literally the shlitin and the rulers over the hashpoa of the nefesh into the guf. So the first entry and the first yichud of the nefesh with the klei aguf, it is taki in the moyach. The ha'oras ha'nefesh nimsheches lahachiyes aguf. Or that ha'or of the nefesh, which goes down into the different Evrei Haguf to give them chayes, in a klolos ha'chayes, the generality of that chayes, hu b'moyach sheparosh, u'mishom mishpashet ha'ora, and from there expands out with the ha'ora b'chol ha'evarim lefi mizgom utchunosam. Mizgom means their mezig, the way they're made up, literally their, what you might call their delicacy or their otherwise. And how do you say, mizgom tchunosim, it further means their characteristic, their ability to react to certain delicate inyonim in ruchnias, or otherwise, or not so much. And therefore we see the heart is very much able still to, not the same delicacy as the brain, but a very tremendous delicacy. And then we see other things like the eyes and the five senses, that they're able also to be mekabel very delicate giluim from the nefesh, but it all begins with the moyach shebarosh. But you notice that he calls it klolus hachayes. Now he doesn't call it chayes kloli, but he calls it klolus hachayes, because the idea of chayes kloli, that's another movement. That's a inyan of a chayes which is not mislavish in the moyach any more than any other. Well, that's what we call the seiviv, or the makif shebekol hachayes. And that's kilo in nimshak from the nefesh directly into the whole group of bas achas, in one inyan, in one ha'ora klolia. However, what we said at the chayes in the moyach is kloli. We don't call it chayes kloli, but we call it klolus achayes. Not the general chayes, but the generality of chayes. The generality of the chayes, meaning that the way all the chayes is in the brain, or this is all derived in of what we call klal and prat. You have a sort of like a general rule, and then you draw out from a different pratim. So that's moving that it's higher than that. I mean, it's not just like a series of rules from which you can draw out details, but it's mi'ain there, and it's compared to the highest quality we just mentioned. It's for sure like that, but it's still a general state. It's not any given detailed state like the hamshocha, or the eye, or the moyach fill in the lev, or fill in the fingers, or the feet, or the eyes, or other inyanim. It's like a general inyan. Therefore, we see that the moyach has a very general, what do you call it, hashpah over the whole adam, and the slightest little interference with the moyach, like the Gemara says when you get to treifes, in the moyach causes the whole mensch either Rahman in Islam death or complete incapacity of a because the way the chayes is in the moyach, it's a inyan kloli, and that's going to get to Akshov. That's why we call Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah. Not the first of the year or the beginning of the year or the importance of the year, but we call it the head of the year. In other words, that it's the brain. It's got in itself a inyan, a chayes, which is generality of all the chayes, which is going to be nimshach into the, but it's generality in the sense that it's nimshach yom yom, hour after hour, bit by bit, into the whole seder of the year, going through Rosh Chodesh and other more general stages as well. So that's the inyan of chlolos achayes, not chayes klolis, but chlolos achayes, a inyan of generality, but albeit relative generality, and from there it goes out ahora to all the evadim. V'adugma mizeh yuven l'mayla b'chinas kishu v'chiba atzmus erein seipa ne'at tzolip. So that's more or less finished the long mashal of the yachas, the goof with the nefesh with the goof, and the entry of the nefesh into the Eira goof. So he said, Adugma from all of that can be understood l'mayla. Similarly, the joining together and the link of atzmus erein seipa b'ner tzolim into the esesphiras of Atzilas, shezehu k'may chibo anefesh b'guf. Shabo michaim ruchniim l'chaim b'sarim. But this, like we saw, it comes from a state of chaim ruchniim into chaim b'sarim. Yes, she'ein zeh mi'etzem ha'nefesh. That doesn't come from the etzem, and nishem mushleles mizeh. Ki im mibchinas ha'oras ha'nefesh labad. K'moi keim b'chinas atzmas erein seif moved be'erach mibchinas esesphiras. The Eibush is moved al legamrei in his etzem from the whole inyan of esesphiras, like we say every Friday in the Pasuk Eliyahu, the lav mikol ilain midas ihu klal, that he is not from any of these midas at all. In other words, he's not included or contained in any of these midas at all. Rak b'chinas ha'ora da'ora levad. It's only ha'ora da'ora from Atmas Ein Seif, which is meir into Atzilas. Shahain b'chinas oisid. Oh, once again here we see what is really the ha'ora and what is really the koach ruchni, which brings from the b'china taktoina in the atmos, like we saw earlier before in the brackets, the yoisa acharin, the shabbatmas ain't saved, which is able to go down and enter. Well, that's the inyan of oisias, or it's the inyan of shemois, the ab sag ma'u ban, the one on the four. And shemois are the shem ab and the shem sag and the shem ma and the shem ban. They are literally the combinations of the oisias, the shem avaya, but they are mamshik the oiris into the kelim. But we'll talk about that more in the coming class. Who shemish lavish besesphiras tatzilas, the b'chinas arazu he bo b'chinas isaktas mamish be'kelim desesphiras ukamoya nefesh, just like we saw in the nefesh shepoel alidei evra guf, k'fi mahus l'tavker v'alidei zichuch hakelim, meya behem oyer nefesh k'moy kein hu l'mayla she'oiros poelim k'fi mahus hakelim. But they are also poel according to the mahus of the kelim. The iu, where are we? The iu gamoyu chad Livrei Behem Val Yadam Me'ain Le'yesh. In other words, that eventually, through the medium of the Kelim, the oidos are able to be poiled, just like the nefesh is poiled through the Eira Guf into Gashmias Oilam. Similarly, the Eivsa brings about Yesh Me'ayin through the union of the oidos with the Kelim. And we'll see about that expression here, Vagameo Chad, a little bit more in the coming class, but you're no doubt familiar with it, as the Alter Rebbe brings down in Tanya, the famous Igeras, which we're coming pretty close to. We're going to learn on Rosh Hashanah. The Eibush is Mahavi Yesh Mi'ayin Alidei, the Yichud of the Eretz and the Kelim in Olam HaTzil. And he said, Iyu V'chayeyu Chad Ve'yu Gamoi Hichad. Alidei, the Yichud of the Eretz with the Kelim, through that is the coming about of Yesh Mi'ayin, Yisavas Islands. Okay, good, we'll hold that. And we'll see in Mitzvah Hashem coming and hopefully developing episodes of Hashem. So we want to, I forgot to tell the rabbis, we need to organize a minute for slichas in the morning. You guys got to say slichas. And they want at 6:30 in the morning, 5:30.
7's pretty good.
Huh?
7's probably good.
7 o'clock.
12:30.
Huh?
12:30.
12:30.
Oh, night.
12:30. Mishuma, the meaning is only to say at night one time. After you have to be kind of the meaning where it's written Bashmeres Haboikel. So we call for 7.
That's how we did it last year.
That's what we did last year, right? And it takes about 3/4 of an hour or more to say the slichas, and you can learn chassidus a little bit, about 40 minutes. Chassidus. And if you make it any later, you won't learn any chassidus before. I don't know if you do anyway, but technically, theoretically, you have to lose some time. Wait till we call for 7 o'clock. Yep. Right. He just took off altogether.